Right now on Morning News Now, pressure and pushback against President Trump's steep new tariffs. Now the president granting temporary relief to the big three automakers as concerns grow over the costs for everyday Americans.
Definitely costs a lot to get groceries and stuff right now, so I hope that it doesn't go up too much.
I mean, we don't have a choice. If it's certain things that we need, especially food, we don't have a choice but to purchase, so, I mean, what are you going to do?
We have team coverage with the latest from Washington to Wall Street and beyond. Also this morning, a 1-2 punch of winter weather still impacting millions of people from coast to coast. We are tracking the conditions and the warnings, plus when warmer weather could be heading your way. Plus, it's being called a profound tragedy. Researchers predicting more than half of adults worldwide will be overweight or obese by 2050. We will break down the eye-opening new study. And wrestling royalty. A new film is shining the spotlight on a trailblazer in women's sports. We will look back at the life and legacy of wrestler Mildred Burke, plus Joe's conversation with the actress and director telling Burke's story on the big screen. Such a cool one you have
It's
for
a
us.
story I had never heard of before, which is stunning because she was the first female $1 million athlete. We'll dig into that a little bit later. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for being with us. We're going to begin our show this morning with the Trump administration's recently launched trade war with America's three biggest trading partners. U.S. markets bounced back on Wednesday after President Trump granted U.S. automakers a 1-month exemption on what would have been a 25% tariff on new cars and auto parts coming out of Canada and Mexico.
The White House revealed that the big three car makers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, requested a reprieve. Those companies need more time to prepare. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt offered this update on the tariff roller coaster yesterday.
We spoke with the big three auto dealers. We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA. Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd. But at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage.
In a few moments, we will get an update from White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist on the efforts to cut the federal government. But first, let's get the latest on tariffs from NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Brian, good morning. So explain to us how this auto exemption deal works. Is 1 month enough time for these automakers to deal with the tariffs?
Yeah, well, so again, just to kind of set the stage, midnight into Tuesday, the president slapped that 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. But then yesterday, we got the announcement that there would be this carve-out, this exemption for the automakers. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. automakers. It's any automaker that's in compliance with the USMCA, which was that trade agreement that was negotiated under Trump with Canada and Mexico in 2020. So this could be BMW, this could be Toyota, these could be foreign automakers that build in North America. The reason for why they wanted this carve out is because of the stat that I gave you, I believe a few days ago, where we said that the estimates for the cost that could be added to a car as a result of these tariffs could be in some cases as high as $12,000. Again, $12,000 because we get parts from Mexico. We assemble a lot of these cars in Canada. That would have made the cost astronomically higher to bring that back into the United States as it gets tariffed multiple times. Seems like the car makers getting that reprieve is very much welcome on Wall Street, with Ford shares rising over 5% yesterday.
Brian, we know the president spoke with Canada's prime minister yesterday in an effort to maybe meet in the middle when it comes to these tariffs. Could we see more exemptions like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's still other type of diplomacy that needs to happen between now and the weekend, and that's because we heard from Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, saying that she was looking at actually slapping their retaliatory tariffs and making an announcement sometime over the weekend. So, yes, there's going to be more dialogue that's probably going to happen between the United States and its partners to the north and south, but it does seem like the only exemption, the only relief that we got so far from these tariffs are actually the result of conversations between domestic producers here in the United States and the White House. As you mentioned at the lead up here, it was really the automakers that went to the White House and said, hey, let's talk about the way that these tariffs are structured. This is just really not a type of structure that would help us here because we are so intertwined, our economies between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. We can't uncouple that very quickly. That's the reason why the Trump administration gave them a month of reprieve. So maybe it's really more the, the business side of the conversation that's going to be more impactful than, say, those phone calls with those politicians.
Brian, while we have you, let's ask you about the oil market. Over the last few days, crude prices have been falling, in part because of this decision by OPEC Plus to push ahead with plans to increase output in April. Help us understand what's going on here and how this tariff debate plays into everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important point that you make up because OPEC is kind of the major driver of the price changes that we've seen in oil right now. They are the major supplier around the world. But when it comes to the tariffs, there are major implications for the price of American gasoline as well. And the reason why is because we bring in so much Canadian crude, we refine it in the United States, and then that's the type of fuel that we put into our cars every day. So when you look at the prices at the pump, we haven't seen the immediate tariffs yet because of the fact that, well, they only took place at midnight on Tuesday. But we have some estimates, like from Gas Buddy, that prices specifically in the Northeast could rise as much as like 20 cents per gallon after a few weeks of these tariffs being implemented. So again, the kind of prolonged nature of these tariffs could be very impactful to the prices that we see at the pump.
All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Let's switch gears now to the Trump administration's ongoing efforts to scale back the federal workforce.
Yeah, the man spearheading that, of course, Elon Musk, met with Republican lawmakers last night to discuss the work of his Department of Government Efficiency. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Aaron Gilchrist, on this. Hey, Aaron, good morning. So we've watched in the last week or so as Republicans have gone home to their districts. They face these crowds that are angry over what DOJ is doing in town halls and things like that, and how they're going about it. What came out of this meeting between Musk and congressional Republicans?
So let me remind you first that Elon Musk has said he believes that he can save the government $1 trillion through the work that he and his DOJ team have been doing. The meetings yesterday, two separate meetings, one with Senate Republicans, the other with House Republicans. And I think the big headline out of these meetings was what came out of the meeting with Senate Republicans in particular, where there was discussion about making these DOJ cuts permanent. Elon Musk was introduced to the idea of a rescission proposal, which effectively would claw back the monies that are appropriated for different programs and agencies and efforts that would make, again, these cuts that he's been making permanent. We're told that he was happy about that option, the possibility of not having to deal with legal challenges, not having to deal with questions around the president's authority to not spend money that's already been appropriated. And so this is now something that Elon Musk has in his pocket as he's going through these federal agencies, making these cuts in both budgets and funding and in workforce. Joe and Savannah.
Aaron, speaking of cuts, there's a report in the Wall Street Journal. NBC News has not independently confirmed it, but it says the president is expected to issue an executive order as early as today that would abolish the Department of Education. Tell us what the Journal's reporting here, and how could something so significant like this actually happen in reality? What would it look like?
Yeah, so this reporting in the Journal does line up with some of what we've been expecting to come over the last several weeks in particular. You'll remember that the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, was just confirmed on Monday, and at that time she sent a message to staffers at the Department of Education saying that her vision is very much aligned with President Trump's vision to send education back to the states. This message that went out was titled Final Mission for the Department of Education. And so she talked about the idea of restoring oversight of education programs to the states. And she said that that restoration would result in a profound impact on staffing, on budgets, on operations at the federal Department of Education. And so the expectation with that is that she's going to start doing the things over the next several months that would very much look like eliminating the major functions of the department. She said during her confirmation hearing that she acknowledged that Congress would be needed in order to fully eliminate the department. But she said that the goal is not to stop funding programs that are important, programs that need to be funded for children's education. But she said that it might make more sense to move some of those programs, some of that oversight, under other departments when it comes to young people, students who have disabilities and things of that nature. She thought that HHS might be better equipped to handle that sort of oversight, Savannah and Joe.
Aaron, also another potential cut here, Veterans Affairs. It looks like that department's bracing for mass layoffs. What are we expecting there, and what impact would that have?
Well, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs posted, I think it was about a 4-minute video on social media yesterday explaining that he's looking to cut about 15% of the workforce at the Department of Veterans Affairs. By our math, that would equal probably about 80,000 workers. We know that in that first round of cuts that we saw across the federal government, folks who took the buyout, Some of them were at the Department of Veterans Affairs. There have also been probationary employees there who've been laid off already. And so now the secretary making clear that he intends to cut potentially 80,000 workers from that agency. He said that he would be able to do that without affecting health care, without affecting benefits. The pushback on that has been, how do you cut so many positions and think that it wouldn't have any impact on the agency's ability to serve its constituency? And so that's some of the concern. But the secretary said very bluntly in his message that he's going to be making major changes, so get used to it.
All right, Aaron Gilchrist, thank you very much.
Now, these efforts to remake the federal government are facing some major legal hurdles. And yesterday, the Supreme Court sided with a federal judge who ordered the administration to pay out $2 billion to foreign aid groups. It's money that was already owed. That was already owed for contracts with the U.S. Agency for International Development, better known as USAID.
It comes after President Trump issued an executive order last month that froze funding to USAID programs as it reevaluates foreign aid. Well, that led major contractors, including the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition and the Global Health Council, to file lawsuits in which they claimed they were owed money.
NBC News senior Supreme Court reporter Lawrence Hurley has been covering this case. He joins us now, and our legal analyst Danny Savalos is here with us on set. Lawrence, let's start with you and your reporting. The order was unsigned. That was 1 page long. There was a dissent. That was 8 pages long. So where was the split, and what was the reason the majority sided with this federal judge?
Yeah, so welcome to the opaque world of the Supreme Court, because in these orders, they often don't explain why they're ruling the way they did, and the majority didn't explain. We can sort of infer from it that they thought that the federal judge was kind of doing what federal judges do. He had issued a temporary restraining order 2 weeks ago, and he felt like the government wasn't complying, and that's why he issued another order requiring the government to pay up this money. And the dissent, though, we do hear from them. Justice Samuel Alito wrote at length saying he was stunned by what the court had done because he thought that the judge was imposing on the executive branch's authority to pay its bills and decide who it's going to pay. So what we can infer from that there are 4 justices who don't agree with the majority. And interestingly, in the majority, you had the 3 liberal justices joined by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, 2 of the conservative members of the court.
Danny, this is a pretty narrow ruling, though, ultimately, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's the case with a lot of this litigation involving Trump executive orders. Yes, you can call it a win or a defeat for Trump, but this is really a skirmish in the overall war because at this stage, we're dealing with temporary restraining orders, preliminary injunctions. These are all things that almost by definition don't go to the merits of the case. They are a pause, a preservation of the status quo. And in this case, that preservation of the status quo is forcing the government to pay out these invoices, these bills. Now, of course, the government argues, and Justice Alito pointed out, that preserving the status quo ordinarily doesn't mean forcing someone to pay out $2 billion. It's an interesting point. But ultimately, the final issue of whether or not the government has to pay out these bills isn't even before any of these, well, not the Supreme Court right now. These are all pauses. The real issue is still being litigated on the merits. So we don't yet know the answer to whether or not the executive branch can simply say, hey, Congress appropriated these funds, they passed these laws. We just don't feel like paying it because it's our money, the executive branch money.
So, Lawrence, when we talk about the narrow issue, what do we know about what this money was going toward? And when will these contractors get paid, especially when you consider that a good chunk of the USAID staff no longer has a job?
Yeah, so as we've heard, it's a fast-moving case. There's actually a hearing today, but in the district court, and the judge has also asked for the government to sort of file some papers explaining, what the current status is in terms of who's being paid what and when they might be able to pay them. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, these are all for work that has already been done. This lawsuit in the district court involves much broader claims which weren't at issue before the Supreme Court. So we're just talking here in this Supreme Court action about this $2 billion, which still hasn't been paid as far as we're aware. And the Supreme Court didn't actually order them to pay it. It just means that the district court can move forward with his hopes that they will pay at some point. And as this covers all kinds of contracts across the world, including water irrigation projects, including in Ukraine, some anti-malaria programs in Africa, and healthcare supplies and things like that in Asia. So a lot of things covered by this.
Danny, we expect to see an influx of legal challenges, whether that be from USAID and anything else going on there, or any of these other federal agencies that are sort of being reshaped as the Trump administration is saying. Does this ruling give you a hint as to how those may go?
Yes, we know, in my view, the Trump administration's plan is a pretty straightforward one. Fire out all these executive orders. They cost nothing. They cost the price of a piece of paper and a Sharpie. Get them out there and then just see what the courts do. And if you don't like it, go back to the drawing board. That's why I caution folks, don't look at these as defeats or victories for the Trump administration because of their ability. It's almost like they've exploited a loophole in the executive branch where they can just try out all these executive orders, see what happens, and if they're pruned like the proverbial bonsai tree, great. If they get struck down, no big deal. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
All right. Lawrence and Danny, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Well, now let's get to the latest on those deadly storms that have been sweeping across the country this week. Since Monday, at least 13 tornadoes have touched down across 5 states, including Mississippi, where at least 3 people are dead and buildings were ripped apart. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park has the details.
Residents tell us that the storm blew through in a matter of seconds, and in just that short amount of time, you can see the damage left behind. This home completely torn apart. You can just see the frame. Meanwhile, part of the home ended up in the pool. Extreme weather striking all corners of the country. A powerful line of storms unleashing hurricane-force winds in the Carolinas.
This is insane.
And whiteout conditions in the Midwest, grounding flights making a mess on the roads, even shutting down parts of the interstate in Nebraska. The South recovering from torrential downpours and ferocious flash flooding. The storms being blamed for at least 3 deaths and several injuries in Mississippi. Hard-hit Wayne County was still recovering from last month's EF3 tornado that damaged dozens of homes. They're finding their way forward after another likely tornado.
Just kind of came out of nowhere. It was a really scary 15 seconds.
Supper turned into survival mode for Lynn Smith and her family.
I've never prayed so hard in 15 seconds in my life. We walked from right there to right here and just got on the floor and put some pillows over our heads and prayed for the best.
Since Monday, at least 13 tornadoes have been confirmed across 5 states, and peak severe weather season is still weeks away.
This is a preview of what's to come.
Potentially, just looking at the overall picture, usually March, April is when it really starts to heat up.
As the late winter storm now races east, the mid-Atlantic in the bullseye for damaging winds and downpours. Kathy Park, NBC News.
And let's get the latest on the severe winter storm and what to expect next with your Morning News Now weather.
Angie Lastman joins us now. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. I've got some good news when it comes to that winter storm. It's moving out. We're going to see some improvements, but we've got kind of a couple of spots that'll see some lasting impacts. That's specifically focused across the Great Lakes in the Northeast for now. We've also got kind of an active pattern setting up out west. We've got a couple of storm systems we're going to track over the next few days that could become cross-country systems. We'll get to that here in a moment, but let's talk about that exiting winter storm. It's moving out, taking most of the heavy rain with it, but notice these cold winds coming across the lakes. You know what that means. It means the lake effect snow bands are going to kind of still be leaving us with some additional snowfall across the interior portions of the Northeast through the day today. Snowfall amounts, not all that impressive, but we could see a couple of spots dealing with some difficult travel on those roadways, especially in those higher elevations. Notice, though, the wind alerts, they're holding on strong. We've got 69 million people stretching from the Appalachians up into portions of New England, including parts of Michigan as well. And this is because our winds once again expected to be 30 to 40 plus miles per hour through the day today. So heads up, the trees, the power lines, all of that same kind of stuff that we saw yesterday. Our winds aren't quite as strong, but we could still see those be issues through our afternoon hours today. On top of that, out west, we've got plenty of winter alerts. You can see them stretch from the Great Basin to the Rockies, and we've got basically some heavy snow that's going to set up from our first system that's working across that region through the day today. Now, there's a secondary front you'll notice that's going to hang out right around Southern California. It's going to bring a batch of some rain, much needed rain, I will say, across that region, so they'll have to deal with that today. Tomorrow, improvement for California. We'll see drier conditions, but the desert Southwest will start to become unsettled as that system works east, and we'll also see kind of this narrow band of snow set up over parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes. It'll have a little rain associated with it as well. So we'll deal with a little bit of that kind of slowdown when it comes to those couple of regions, guys. Snowfall totals, maybe a foot in some of the higher elevations. So holding on to winter in some spots.
They're used to it.
They're used to it.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
You got it.
Well, NBC News has some exciting news of its own to share this morning. Over the summer, NBC News Now anchor Tom Yamas will take over as anchor and managing editor of NBC Nightly News. The network announced yesterday that Yamas will succeed longtime anchor, the beloved Lester Holt, when he steps down from the role.
Yamas is a senior national correspondent and has anchored his show Top Story right here on News Now since 2021. He says anchoring nightly news is a, quote, profound honor and one that carries tremendous responsibility. Yamas will become the first Latino journalist to host the weeknight edition of Nightly News when he starts his new job over this summer, and he will continue to anchor Top Story right here on NBC News Now. We are very excited for Tom and wish him all the best. Tom. All right, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, TikTok on the clock. Find a buyer in the U.S. Well, now a billionaire businessman is making a bid. Hear his plan to keep the platform alive.
But first, though, after the break, major developments out of the Middle East. President Trump warning Hamas to release the remaining Israeli hostages immediately, or else. We'll bring you the latest next. Welcome back. In a blunt warning via social media, President Trump threatened to have members of Hamas and Palestinians in Gaza killed if the remaining hostages are not released immediately. In a post on Truth Social on Wednesday, the president wrote in part, Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you.
That ominous post followed Mr. Trump's Oval Office meeting on Wednesday with 8 hostages released by Hamas. Many of them are advocating for their friends and families still held by Hamas. They gave testimonials thanking Mr. Trump for their release in a video that was posted by the White House to social media. We're learning the Trump administration is engaging in direct talks with Hamas, breaking with long-standing American policy to not negotiate with the militant group.
NBC News International correspondent Matt Bradley joins us from Hostage Square in Tel Aviv with more here. Matt, good morning. So what do we know about the scope of these talks between the U.S. and Hamas?
Yeah, guys, I mean, the short answer is not very much. We heard from Caroline Leavitt, the spokeswoman for the White House last night, and she filled in some of the blanks around this very controversial move. Hamas, as you mentioned, a identified terrorist organization, not just here in Israel, but for most European countries and for the United States. Talking with them directly could almost be illegal, but she clarified that this was being done by Trump's designated hostage negotiator or coordinator, who, by definition, is allowed to speak to criminal organizations in order to release hostages. So that may make this more of a legal move. Now, this is something that we've already seen some success on behalf of the Trump administration and the former Biden administration in releasing some of these hostages. Whether or not this actually leads anywhere, that's hard to know. As you mentioned, Trump also accompanied the news about these direct talks with a statement of really, really big threat against Hamas, telling them that they need to leave now. They need to give up all of the bodies of the deceased hostages and the living hostages, of which there is only one American, Aiden Alexander, a young man who is Israeli-American, who is in the Gaza Strip. So it sounds as though, from other reporting that we've been hearing, these direct talks between the United States and Hamas are going to be focused on the handful of Americans, most of whom are dead, who are still being held in the Gaza Strip. NPR, quoting some Hamas officials, said that these direct talks may have started as early as January, which raises the question about whether or not they actually began under the previous administration of Joe Biden. Now, this White House spokeswoman, she was asked yesterday whether or not these direct talks with Hamas included any discussions about Donald Trump's controversial proposal to own the Gaza Strip and turn it into a, quote, Riviera. She declined to comment. Guys.
Matt, let's talk more about President Trump's Truth Social post threatening the militant group, threatening Palestinians in Gaza. It has been seen as a shocking ultimatum. What has been some of the response, including from Hamas?
Well, Hamas said that this was simply Trump enabling Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's war crimes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And, you know, for a lot of people, especially Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, they're going to see this as just part and parcel with America's support for the Israelis that has been going on, according to them, for generations. And they see this as just another step of the Americans taking toward punishing Palestinians, they would say, for standing up for their rights. But actually, in that Truth Social post, we heard at the very end of it, Donald Trump addressing the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, saying that they had a beautiful future to look forward to if only they would give up the hostages.
All right, Matt, thank you very much.
There is a new push to negotiate an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Defense officials from the U.S. and the U.K. will meet today at the Pentagon. This comes after Ukrainian President Zelensky said he is ready to negotiate a peace deal with help from the Trump administration.
It comes as European leaders are hosting an emergency summit in Brussels to try to shore up support for Kyiv. President Trump cut off military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine earlier this week. It was after last week's heated Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky.
NBC's Matt Bodner joins us now from London with the latest. Matt, good morning. So the Trump administration has been increasing the pressure on Ukraine this past week. What are we hearing specifically from President Zelensky about this new willingness to come back to the table?
Thanks, Joe. Well, Zelensky is in an incredibly difficult situation, and he's really trying to balance all this out at the moment. So as we know, he did notify the White House that he is trying to make things right. He's ready to sign that minerals agreement. Work is being done. In his address last night, Zelensky mentioned that his chief of staff is talking to Mike Waltz, the national security advisor. So work is moving forward, and he said we should start to see some results on that as soon as next week. Of course, this has been a very fluid situation. I do think that the announcement that intel sharing was being suspended caught everyone by surprise, including European allies. And Europe is obviously a big part of this for Zelensky, more important than ever. We're seeing Ukraine gravitate more in that direction, obviously still trying to keep the U.S. Engaged. But Zelensky is in Brussels today meeting with European leaders. So we're going to keep an eye on that. One thing he did say is he thanked Europe for its support, just emphasizing how important it is for Ukraine to not feel alone. But, you know, if you take a step back, it is interesting to watch. Not only is Zelensky kind of caught in this very difficult balancing act between his own nation's interests in these negotiations and keeping Trump involved, but I think we're seeing this with all European leaders at the moment, trying to figure out how to find a path forward that suits them, that you know, somehow satisfies European security interests without alienating Donald Trump at this point.
So, Matt, what will be happening today in this meeting between U.S. and British officials in Washington?
Definitely one to keep an eye on. So the British are sort of pursuing an interesting tack right now, trying to stand as a middleman between Europe, Ukraine, and the United States. So we're going to see the UK Defense Secretary John Healey beginning 2 days of meetings in Washington, meeting with Pete Hegseth today, essentially reviewing some of the proposals that came out of that EU meeting, that European meeting in London on Sunday. That included things such as some kind of European peacekeeping force on the ground in Ukraine. What we don't know is whether or not they will actually push back or at least bring up this U.S. decision to cut intel sharing with Ukraine, which does appear to have caught at least the United Kingdom by surprise.
So, Matt, we've got the UK, but it also really seems like France is really stepping up to fill the void in leadership left by the U.S. What do we know about the peace plan European leaders are drawing up at today's security summit?
So that peace plan is the point of the meeting. We're seeing a lot of very interesting discussions in that context from European leaders. The big one so far at the meeting today, or at least one of the big issues, is this idea that perhaps the French nuclear shield could be expanded to cover Europe, to replace American security guarantees on the nuclear front for NATO if such a situation arose that the United States could no longer be trusted or relied upon to provide a nuclear deterrent to Europe, though this is a big discussion, and France is essentially opening the table for proposals on how to do this. We have heard from the Germans on this. They have said that it's probably best not to move too quickly with that. There is a concern that were the French to step in and fill that role in Europe to make big noise about it, it could actually backfire and accelerate a potential U.S. withdrawal from European security, at least on the nuclear front. There are a number of other things that the Europeans are doing. There's a lot of talk about a continent-wide rearmament campaign, a lot of money being funneled into Ukraine's defenses, Ukraine's defense industry. One actually quote that stuck out to me came from the Polish leader, Donald Tusk, at the summit today, saying essentially Russia will lose an arms race with Europe, just like the Soviet Union did. So this is, I think, a really good measure of where the debate in Europe is at right now. Just yesterday, we saw the head of the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, calling for a lot of money to be spent, about 860 billion US dollars, not just on European defense rearmament, but also bolstering Ukraine. So a lot of movement on this front in Europe this week.
All right, Matt, thank you so much.
Well, coming up, a growing problem. Researchers predict more than half of adults worldwide will be overweight or obese in 25 years. The warning from an eye-opening new study.
Prosecutors pushing for swift justice in a concert ticket scam involving Taylor Swift's popular Eras Tour. That's next. This is Morning News Now. We're back now with a look at a new global study that is sounding the alarm on obesity. It was published in the Lancet Journal and predicts that by 2050, more than half of all adults will be overweight or obese, and a third of children and young people.
Researchers are calling the results a profound tragedy, but they say there is still time to turn things around. But that's if governments worldwide take urgent action.
Joining us now for more, NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Obviously, staggering numbers predicted here. What are the factors behind this?
So I think there's probably, 5 big domains that we talk about in terms of what the cause is. One is a lack of physical activity, and especially we worry about young kids, screen time, sedentary jobs. I think the next category could probably really stand on its own, and that is unhealthy eating behaviors. We've basically made what experts are calling a nutrition transition from whole and plant-based foods to more processed foods that are more animal-based. And think about all of these packaged foods that are so calorically dense with high sugar and high fat, just terrible, terrible for us. Poor quality sleep, stress, not just stress releasing the cortisol, which is a stress response that can affect hunger, but economic stress that also leads to food insecurity, and then health conditions, things like PCOS, metabolic diseases that can also disrupt your hormone balance, that can disrupt hunger and things like that. So a lot of different factors that all play into this.
This conversation, though, is happening right when we talk so much about weight loss drugs.
Yes.
And it almost feels like they just were like this miracle thing that burst onto the scene that we're hearing and learning so much about. It feels like almost every day. How does that play in here?
So the authors of this article do acknowledge that they are making these predictions and not including the impact that these weight loss medications could potentially have on those numbers. And I think they probably will make a dent on those numbers. Yeah. And we've spent a lot of time reporting on how amazing these weight loss medications are. And you can hear sort of in the background and say, well, are we just sort of treating the problem? Let's get to the underlying root of the problem, which we're also now having a conversation about. But do I think that these medicines will have a tremendous impact on sort of like slowing the progression of this obesity and overweight epidemic? I absolutely think that they will. And so we're very fortunate that this has happened in parallel, if you will.
When we look specifically at young people and kids, it feels like that takes systemic change.
Yes.
Governments.
Right.
Healthcare systems.
Right.
What are some of the steps that need to be taken?
And really, it does start with, individually, we can all make changes, obviously at the personal level, but this really will take a whole of government effort. It really is about identifying and prioritizing those individuals who are most at need. And we're talking about the socioeconomic factors that are limiting people's ability to actually have a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. There has to be a coherent public policy that sort of is generalized and universal for everyone in our country. And it's very, very important, I think, too, that there has to be some incentive to sort of have alternative practices. And what I'm talking about is supermarkets, food chains. There's got to be something in it for them in industry to start preparing more, healthier food options. We saw this over the last couple of years McDonald's suddenly giving salads and things like that, but there has to be more of an effort, in all of those different arenas to make a difference.
It just feels like our food system is broken too, though, when you hear about like things that aren't allowed even to be in foods in other countries,
right?
Versus here, that's where, as Joe mentioned, government help.
And again, to give credit where credit is due, if RFK Jr. can do something about that, all the power to him. We're all for it.
Bye, red dye.
Right, exactly.
Thanks.
You bet.
All right, well, Swifties are looking for some swift justice after a new Eras Tour scam came to light. Prosecutors are alleging that fans were duped by a duo who made hundreds of thousands of dollars by stealing and reselling tickets. Take a look.
Welcome to the Eras Tour. 2 people arrested and charged for stealing and reselling tickets for Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. In a scheme that spanned from New York to Jamaica, prosecutors say the accused raked in over $600,000 by stealing around 350 StubHub orders and ultimately 993 tickets, most for Swift's record-shattering tour. Here's how prosecutors say it worked. One of the accused worked for a third party contracted by StubHub. They stole the tickets by redirecting the URLs of legitimately purchased tickets to accomplices who then downloaded and resold them. Attorneys representing the accused thieves could not be reached. Tickets to the Eras Tour hard to come by and expensive.
Just really wanted to see Taylor.
The initial sale even causing a Ticketmaster meltdown, leaving fans reeling.
I didn't get tickets to the Taylor Swift concert.
StubHub says they've strengthened security measures to protect fans and sellers from theft in the future. In the rare event of an issue, they'll provide customers with an equivalent or better replacement ticket or a refund.
Well, according to the district attorney's office, the suspects here are each charged with second-degree grand larceny, first-degree computer tampering, fourth-degree conspiracy, and fourth-degree computer tampering.
Coming up, he is offering billions to buy TikTok. American entrepreneur Reed Rasner says he's ready to take over the popular platform. He's going to join us next with new details about his bid.
And going for gold again, some of the world's best athletes training for next year's Winter Paralympics. When we return, 3-time gold medalist Declan Farmer joins us to talk about how the U.S. sled hockey team is working toward a 4th goal. Stay with us. You're watching Morning News Now. We are back with an update on an offer to buy TikTok from an American businessman. Wyoming entrepreneur Reed Rasner is offering to buy the popular social media app from its current Chinese owners, that's that company ByteDance, for nearly $50 billion. Rasner joined us back on the show in February and had this to say about why he made the bid.
This is a national security risk. We're securing this for America. We're securing this for 170 million Americans who are current users, securing their data and making a massive, massive deal of the century.
This comes as the Trump administration is working to secure the future of TikTok in the U.S., with President Trump ordering a 75-day pause on that ban on the app when he entered office. Well, that pause now is set to expire in less than a month. We have Reed Rasner joining us again now for the latest on his offer. He's the CEO of wealth management firm called Omnivest Financial. Reed, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited to have you because you've just unveiled some new details about your bid in the last few hours now you're sharing with the public. In addition to this, having this focus of American ownership, it's kind of something unusual that you're doing here where it's literally American users of the app essentially getting involved in a financial way. Explain your vision.
Yeah, this is about the American people, and this is about bringing TikTok to America. And I'm going to fight for that day in and day out. So you go to founderstalk.com right now and you sign up. Zero monetary commitment. You're just making a pledge that on day one, when we launch this, you will be a founder of TikTok, and you will have very, very exclusive access to what we're creating in the background. I want to be very clear. This is going to be something so special for creators. And these are the people who truly built TikTok. We're going to bring it to America for Americans and these creators, and we're giving it back to them, the people who built TikTok. And we're going to make sure that they are front and center. So go to founderstalk.com right now. It's live right now. And start signing up and start making your selections.
And Reed, right now, of course, you can use TikTok for free. I guess one of my questions is, will that still be the case under your plan? But also explain to us, I mean, you have something on your website, a plan here that would cost someone up to $12,000 a year. What do you get for that? Why should someone pay that?
Absolutely. So our enterprise, TikTok will always be free. Let's be very, very clear. You will always be able to use TikTok for free and have a free account. But if you're an enterprise, a large corporation, and you want to use TikTok for $12,000 a year, you're going to get exclusive benefits that will boost your content to the appropriate audience. So you're going to be able to go viral more often. If you're just an everyday user and you just want something smaller, $25 a month, you can do that too. And again, it will boost your content. You can start creating content to your audience. We're going to take the guardrails off of this thing, give it back to the creators and allow them to grow and allow them to do something so special. And we want small businesses to thrive. These people rely on TikTok to sell their products or services. And there's a program for them built in there too, where they can sign up today, commit to being a founder of TikTok, and pledge that support with zero money down. You're just saying, I would be interested in this. And you will have exclusive benefits on day one. And let me tell you what, we've been in the talks with AI development, and a lot of very, very amazing things are happening in the background that we're excited to roll out in the coming weeks, letting the American people and these creators know how we're going to benefit them and make sure they're taken care of, make sure that their data is secure, and make sure that this is a platform of free speech that is espionage free.
Reed, I also want to ask what this process has been like. I mentioned President Trump intervened by signing that executive order. He also tasked Vice President Vance with finding a solution here. And there's been big questions about how this is working. As somebody who's interested in buying TikTok, speaking with ByteDance, who they would be buying from, are they speaking with the administration? I understand you have been in contact with the administration. What has that communication been like? What's the process been?
Well, I can't talk about our specific communications within the administration, but I can tell you that we recently hired Goodwin Procter, a Tier 1 global mergers and acquisitions firm right here in America. Michael Kendall is our attorney, and he is a beast in this space. He's prepared to bring TikTok to America. And the negotiations are complex, I can tell you that. We have a lot of things going on. We're in communication with ByteDance. You've got communist China. You've got the administration and American interests. My sole focus is giving this back to Americans and bringing this platform to America.
But just to confirm, because I have been speaking with your team, I do think, right, that the administration kind of reviewed your bid. You've shared that with us.
Yes, absolutely. They 100%. They have our bid. They have our letter of engagement, and we're prepared to move forward. They know it, and I think they're taking it very seriously. From what it sounds like, there's no holding back. The money isn't the issue right now. Bringing all the pieces together is the issue, and we're in constant contact with investors and people, especially leading up to today's announcement, who want in on this. Large corporations are contacting our team. So it's called private equity for a reason. These people remain private in the background. We do the heavy lifting right now. And we'll keep
asking you about it, Reed, and trying to get more information. We appreciate what you've shared with us so far, though. Reed, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, more money news now. President Trump reportedly set to meet with big tech leaders.
Yeah, we've got your CNBC Money Minute. Silvana Hana from CNBC's here. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Good morning to you. Well, President Trump will reportedly meet with the heads of some U.S. tech companies next week as they face pressures from tariffs and stricter rules on chips and products they export to China. Now, Bloomberg says the group includes the CEOs of Hewlett-Packard, Intel, IBM, and Qualcomm. HP confirming the company will attend Monday with trade policy and U.S. manufacturing top of mind. Intel, IBM, Qualcomm, and the White House haven't commented. Amazon's Prime Video is testing an AI dubbing system to translate some content on the streaming service into other languages. It will initially be available in English and Latin American Spanish on a dozen licensed movies and shows. Amazon describing it as AI-aided dubbing, which experts say may have the system take the first pass at generating a dub, with professionals editing them for accuracy. And Google is adding more AI overviews to search, even for users who are logged out. Google is also adding an AI mode, which brings a search-focused chatbot to the core experience. The Verge says it's similar to ChatGPT search. For now, it's only available to users who pay for Google One AI Premium, and they'll have to enable the function in the lab section of search, guys. Send it back to you.
Savannah, thank you so much. We are now just 1 year away from cheering on Team USA athletes competing at the 2026 Winter Paralympics.
The excitement for the Milan Cortina Games is already starting to build here in the U.S. as accomplished athletes like Declan Farmer of the sled hockey team get ready to once again fight for gold.
We're lucky to be joined now by three-time Paralympic gold medalist himself, Declan Farmer. Declan, good to have you with us. This is going to be your fourth Paralympic Games. You've taken the gold in the last three. How is all that experience helping you this time around?
Well, thanks for having me on, Joe and Savannah. It's really great to be here and talk some Paralympics. But yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of stuff that comes with going to a games outside of just playing in the games yourself. You got all your family coming over. There's a lot of media attention. There's living in the Olympic and Paralympic Village. There's the whole getting all the Team USA swag. I kind of got something here, a throwback from a previous games. But I think all that stuff is distractions, and that was kind of it definitely made it more difficult to compete in my first game. So kind of going to previous games, having that experience, kind of knowing what that pressure is like in such a short tournament. I mean, we play 5 games, and you know, once it gets to the semifinal round, you got to win and move on, and that's it. You know, we don't play long series, so it really gets down to crunch time there. And I think just being able to lean on that experience will help me just focus on the games, help my teammates just focus on the games.
And Declan, in addition to these Olympic accomplishments, you're coming off a silver medal in the Sled Hockey World Championships last year. What has your focus been as you head into Milan Cortina, as you spend this time training?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of time training. Being a Paralympic athlete is really a full-time job. So as a sled hockey player, we're traveling to train at a different competition or training camp all over the country pretty much every other week. Outside of that time, I'm at home out here in Colorado training with a small group of teammates, you know, on the day-to-day. And yeah, we lost that last World Championship to Canada, and we're training to try to get it back this next year.
You know, you started on the U.S. national sled hockey team at just 14 years old, which is extraordinary. Now you're an old man. What advice do you give to your younger teammates as they get ready for this big step onto the world stage?
Yeah, you know, we definitely have some younger players on the team. So my advice to them is to really try to capture their potential early on and not feel like they're just a passenger on the team just because they're younger. I was able to have a pretty big impact in my first games in Sochi as a 16-year-old. And I think, you know, success of teams in any sport, whether it's in the Paralympics or in a professional league, it really relies on those young breakout players. So, you know, our youngest players are the ones that are going to be able to improve the most over the next year. So really just helping them be able to capture their highest level of potential over the next season is going to help the team a ton.
Declan Farmer, we are so excited for you. We can't wait to watch. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll check in with you throughout the year.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned earlier, the 2026 Winter Paralympics are just 1 year away, and you can catch Declan and the rest of Team USA at that time on NBC and Peacock. Coming up, she broke barriers in the ring, and now her story is getting told on the big screen.
Yeah, up next, we'll have more on the lasting legacy of wrestler Mildred Burke, plus my conversation with some of the people behind the new film about her life. This is Morning News Now. Finally this hour, March is Women's History Month, and we want to tell you about a new film out in theaters across the country tomorrow, which tells the story of a trailblazer in women's sports, wrestler Mildred Burke. She rose up during the 1930s and became the first female athlete to earn more than $1 million a year, often defying the laws of her time. Queen of the Ring screened in New York earlier this week, and on the red carpet, we got a chance to hear from some modern-day wrestlers about how Burke's story inspired them.
The biggest stars in wrestling have been male for so long, and now showing that women across the board have those roots and can be inspired to accomplish more.
Tenacity is everything, and if you want to do something, don't take no for an answer.
Earlier this week, I sat down with Emily Betts-Rickards, who plays Mildred Burke, and Ash Avildsen, who wrote and directed Queen of the Ring. Here's our conversation. Emily and Ash, good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us for this just incredibly fascinating project. Emily, I'll start with you. What drew you to this character?
Well, as soon as I read the script from Ash, Mildred sort of jumped off the page with this incredible heart, not to mention this dream that she self-describes as coming out of nowhere. She didn't really have a basis for this dream, and she had this just propeller that was in her that against all odds, no matter what, if you told her no, she was going to go after it. And that really inspired me. And she did it all as a single mother with this gorgeous heart. I honor her.
In some ways, she was like the Tina Turner of wrestling with her relationship with her manager and husband, which is very Ike and Tina-esque. But just to see how she didn't let it break her spirit, her glow. Like, she still had it through all of it, which is very, very hard. So I just think the resilience and the passion and also just how much she trailblazed culture at the time.
Emily, she was so successful, and yet we just don't know her story about how groundbreaking she was. Why do you think that is?
Well, the rise of television actually was kind of the kicker, we think. She was that millisecond before. And not being on television as the age of television was taking off really damaged her visibility. But in her era, you know, the women that she was with and who she was with, they were like movie stars, you know, decked out in diamonds and gathering crowds of thousands of people. And this was, you know, women's wrestling was still illegal. So to get thousands of people to come to your show just to prove, to sort of trailblaze this type of equality in this realm of wrestling is incredible.
Her husband manager also is to blame for some of her not being remembered because he downplayed television. This didn't make the final cut of the film, but he talked about, like, why would anyone want to watch our incredible show in some little black and white box? And he completely dismissed it. And what's fascinating from learning from all the research for this film is that Gorgeous George, who's played by Adam Demos, who's in the film, who was inspired by Mildred. He became the most famous wrestler of his time thanks to the TV era, and he was actually one of the reasons they sold televisions at the very beginning. They're called Georgie boxes, and he sold more televisions than almost any pop culture person back then. And it all kind of stems from Mildred, which you'll see in the story how much they had a bond. So just fun inside history that's kind of forgotten by time.
If there's one thing that people can take away from this, what do you hope it is?
Well, we talk about her resilience a lot, but I think that there's something to be learned about having polar opposites come together. She believed that two things can strengthen each other. She was like, I can be feminine and I can be strong. Yeah. And if we involve everyone together, we get stronger together. You start isolating people and putting people down, it only divides us.
Yes.
And she was a true believer in fairness, the right to choose, and bringing us together as a community.
Very good. Emily, Ash, thank you both. We appreciate your time. Looking forward to seeing this movie.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And you can see Queen of the Ring in theaters starting tomorrow. All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for being here this Thursday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the growing global fallout from President Trump's tariff turmoil. The White House announcing some relief for America's big three automakers, at least for now. But prices from the car lot to the grocery store already ticking up. We're watching your wallet in just a moment. Plus, a dramatic Middle East policy shift from the White House. The president now offering a dire warning directly to Hamas. Release all remaining hostages who are still being held in Gaza or else. That message as the White House carries out its own talks with Hamas. We've got the latest. Also this morning, the mounting fears nationwide over those controversial ICE raids that could cross onto school grounds. How it's now keeping some on-edge students out of the classroom. Our Julia Ainsley has that report coming up. And if you're looking to defrost from what was an seemingly endless winter for some, we've got you covered. A look at Airbnb's top travel trends for the spring breaker in all of us. Nice? That time already upon us for many students and others getting ready for that. All right, let's begin this hour with the ongoing fallout from President Trump's newly launched trade war against America's three biggest economic partners, Mexico, Canada, and China.
Yeah, U.S. stocks rebounded on Wednesday after the Trump administration announced a temporary exemption from the tariffs for the big three U.S. automakers. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans has more on that and how other companies are preparing for looming price increases.
Hey there, that announcement from the White House has provided some temporary relief to American auto companies, but the key word here is temporary. While the administration has signaled there could be other carve-outs, the tariffs for those three countries remain largely in place, with more tariffs expected in a matter of weeks.
America's big three automakers breathing a temporary sigh of relief this morning after the Trump administration announced a pause on the 25% tariffs for vehicles and auto parts coming from Mexico and Canada.
The president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage.
That move after the White House says it heard directly from Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. And just hours after the president acknowledged in his address to lawmakers that Americans could have to pay more, while also downplaying the impact.
Quickly, there'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that.
According to one estimate, tariffs will cost the average American household $1,200 to $1,300 more a year for the goods they're buying now.
It's going to cost them more. Building the average house is going to cost more.
From hardware stores to the supermarket shelves, suppliers and shoppers are preparing for price increases in the coming days.
We want to make sure that we give our customers the best value and the best, freshest products available.
At grocery stores like Stu Leonard's, that includes foods from Canada and Mexico like fish and avocados.
Do you think you'll adjust sort of your menu with your kids and stuff based on some of the, I guess how prices come in?
Definitely making more at home than going out and things like that, because I'm sure the restaurant prices are going to go up too.
And while the grocery chain says it will try to absorb some of the cost increase, customers may also see higher prices.
Whoa!
Back in Washington, fears of a trade war ramping up as China, Canada, and Mexico threaten to retaliate to the tariffs. The Chinese embassy in the U.S. tweeting earlier this week, quote, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight to the end." The Trump administration responding yesterday that America will always be prepared to defend itself.
The vice president said while there has been this temporary carve-out for autos, the administration doesn't anticipate doing that for each and every individual industry. And again, that relief for Ford, GM, and Stellantis only extends until next month, when the president says there is potential for new tariffs on virtually every U.S. trading partner. Bottom line, for most of us, the first place we're probably going to notice this is at the grocery store if there aren't any more delays. Back to you.
All right, Christine, thank you.
The Trump administration is continuing its ongoing efforts to reshape the government. Top Trump advisor Elon Musk met with Republican lawmakers overnight as his Department of Government Efficiency takes aim at more federal agencies, places that could be downsized or just eliminated completely. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest.
Good morning to you. President Trump has long wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. He promised as much throughout his first term and again in his latest campaign, even recently telling his Education Secretary Linda McMahon that he wants her to put herself out of a job. McMahon just this week calling it a, quote, momentous final mission as she looks to send education back to the states.
This morning, the president reportedly taking aim at a department that affects schools across the country. The Wall Street Journal, citing people briefed on the matter, reports President Trump's expected to issue an executive order as early as today aimed at abolishing the Department of Education.
I'm saying, what do these people do? What do they do?
NBC News has not independently confirmed the report. The president cannot abolish an entire department without the approval of Congress, but the administration may look for ways to defund programs instead, according to the Washington Post. President Trump has said his aim is cutting down inefficiency and waste. The impact on American school children could be far-reaching. The Department of Education says it serves more than 50 million students across the country. Democrats and labor unions have argued dismantling the department would be devastating.
Class sizes are going to balloon. We know that one-on-one attention that students need will not be there, and it will affect our most vulnerable students, those who are living in poverty, those who have disabilities.
Meanwhile, the president's top lieutenant, Elon Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, huddling privately with congressional Republicans.
There's a lot of opportunity to improve expenditures in the government.
Several senators telling NBC News they discussed the possibility of a package to make DOGE's sweeping cuts permanent, an option that came as a surprise to Musk, who pumped his fist and danced around the room, according to Lindsey Graham.
He was like so happy.
Among the federal firings to come, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins announcing his department is aiming to slash 15% of its workforce, as many as 80,000 employees.
Now, we regret anyone who loses their job, but we'll be making major changes, so get used to it.
Democrats are warning veterans will be the ones who suffer.
This staffing cut is a betrayal of our promise to our service members. It is outrageous.
The Supreme Court also delivered the Trump administration a setback, a narrow 5-4 ruling, the court rejecting the Trump administration's request to freeze nearly $2 billion in spending for foreign aid to contractors who work at USAID, which provides aid like food and medicine to countries around the world. It's not clear when the administration is going to have to start sending out that money. Conservative Chief Justice John Roberts and, interestingly, Amy Coney Barrett joined the liberal justices in this case, ruling against one of President Trump's major efforts to cut federal spending. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Meanwhile, the impact of these cuts to federal agencies is being felt far beyond Washington. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk spoke with local officials and residents in Kansas City who are worried about the future of funding for programs that provide critical necessities like food and housing.
Outside the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
If we are not here, you will not be housed.
An alarm was sounded this week over DOGE's staffing purge and looming budget cuts. 1,000 miles away in Kansas City, the Bentleys and their son with special needs do have housing. Finally.
We were in hotels.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk about the sketchiness of hotels.
We spent many nights crying, praying.
Did it feel helpless?
I felt completely helpless. I felt like I failed. We felt like we failed as parents.
But then they were accepted into a rental assistance program and now live in a housing project almost entirely funded by federal money from HUD.
It literally shows that there are programs to help people who just need just a little leg up.
Just need help.
There is hope.
Edwin Lowndes is the director of the local housing authority that found the Bentleys their house.
Do you think there are inefficiencies in the system?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you want to fix them?
They need to be fixed.
But he has concerns about DOGE.
Someone's just, they're waving their hand over. These people have to go. That's not efficiency.
His office assists nearly 8,000 families with rent in Kansas City. There are 25,000 on the wait list. To operate his program, Lowndes relies on federal partners. Two sources at HUD tell NBC News the Rental Assistance Division's staff could be cut in half by DOGE, which he worries might lead to disruptions to their program here. In a statement, HUD says it is taking inventory of personnel and programs, adding that it serves our most vulnerable and will continue to do so in the most efficient and effective way possible.
Broadly speaking, if the families you work with don't get this assistance,
wow,
what happens to them?
We're going to have a problem. If the program's not in existence, then you're going to have more people under bridges.
Lowndes and his team say they are hopeful leaders in Washington won't let that happen, that their message will be heard. So are the Bentleys.
Why should the federal government fund a program like this?
I would say because it's needed. Please tell me, you don't know one person in your life that didn't need help.
Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Kansas City, Missouri.
Turning now to the growing fears over ICE raids. A Trump administration policy is changed now allows immigration arrests inside schools, places of worship, and hospitals. Well, no one has been arrested on school grounds yet. The fear that it could happen at any moment is keeping some students out of the classroom. NBC's Julia Ainsley spoke with families and educators across the country who are on edge.
Gaping holes left in this Denver apartment door after it was broken by ICE agents the morning of a February immigration raid. Behind it was 9-year-old Nicole. She said, "We were getting ready in the room to go to school, and then ICE knocked down the door, and we were really afraid. We started to cry." She said her mother, Maria, was taken into the hallway by agents in tactical gear. Maria, along with other adults in their apartment complex, were placed in plastic handcuffs and taken away, leaving behind Nicole and her 11-month-old sister, Haide.
Did you think that you were going to be deported back to El Salvador?
She told us, yes. I was really afraid. My biggest fear was that they would send me to some place and deport me, and they would leave my babies. After 6 hours, Maria was released with an ankle monitor so ICE can keep track of her. She has since had the device removed, but Nicole was given a notice to appear before immigration court. Maria said she fled El Salvador after the death of her husband and said she could not support her children there. She crossed the border illegally after being previously deported. Maria says Nicole now has nightmares, and most of all, she is scared to go to school, where she said she once heard ICE agents were patrolling nearby.
What do you think about when you're in school?
That they can come again to school, and this time they will be able to enter and they will take us, she said. 4 students who attended this Denver public school were arrested by ICE the same day Maria was taken into custody, according to Principal Nadia Madden-Morrow.
So as I was coming into work, my phone starts blowing up that there is a raid at one of the apartment buildings where our kids live. And so I learned that our school bus that was supposed to be picking up our kids couldn't actually get close because of all of the commotion there.
Since then, she says, attendance here has dropped by 10%. ICE never came on school property, and there have been no confirmed cases of ICE arresting students at any school. But students and teachers here say they are still on edge. And here's why. The Trump administration did away with a longstanding policy that largely kept ICE from making arrests in schools, houses of worship, and hospitals, leaving open the possibility of students being arrested at school. Back in Denver, the district here filed a lawsuit demanding that ICE stay out of schools. The Trump administration has argued in court that Denver public schools have not been harmed.
In this very library, the day of the raid, which it didn't happen in our schools, but it happened nearby, the emotion, the fear, and the terror in the eyes of our educators was significant. So no one can tell me that we weren't harmed.
Maria, Nicole, and Haide are back in their apartment, sleeping behind the door ICE once left broken, uncertain what the future will hold for them.
And in response to our reporting, an ICE spokesperson said that they will make determinations on whether to go into schools on a case-by-case basis, but that ICE does not typically go into schools. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Julia, thank you so much.
Well, let's get you to weather now. The West Coast is in for some wet, wintry weather. For more, let's check on your Morning News Now forecast.
Angie Lastman is here with that. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We're so close to the weekend, but we've got a couple of storm systems to track between now and then. Some of those prompting some winter alerts across much of the West. You can see they stretch from the plains to the Rockies, out to the Great Basin, and points west of that. We're going to see a couple of storm systems leaving us with some snow and potentially some rain in some of these spots. One of those locations is the Rockies and the Great Basin, where we'll see some heavy snow from this storm system as it works a little farther to the east. That'll be on the move here as we get into tomorrow, too. We'll also watch for some rain across parts of Southern California. Specifically, they need the rain, so we'll take it. But again, it'll leave folks with an interruption in their outdoor plans through the day today. By tomorrow, that first storm system works across the middle of the country. It slides into the Great Lakes, the Midwest, and that's where some snow sets up. We also see some unsettled weather across parts of the desert Southwest as that secondary system works out of California. Drier weather will settle in for them, but of course the desert Southwest will see some of that rain. Big picture look for your snowfall forecast through at least tomorrow. We could see up to a foot in some spots. Again, this is mainly across the Rockies, the Great Basin, but again, in those higher elevations, close to about a foot of snow for folks there. That's what's happening out west. And then we have kind of what's left over of that pesky storm system, that massive storm system that really just caused a whole lot lot of trouble for folks over the past couple of days. That's moving out, but notice the rain and some snow showers that are still left. Most of the rain will lift well away from us as that system works farther away, but we still deal with some of these kind of snow showers that are focused across the interior portions of the Northeast. We still do have those gusty winds. That's going to help fuel some of that lake effect snow happening downwind of the lakes. And on top of that, the wind alerts, they are up for about 69 million people, stretching down through the Appalachians. And you can see why. 30, 40+ mile per hour winds again today. It will be gusty, guys, across much of this region.
All right. We know to keep an eye on it, Angie. Thank you.
Thanks. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. After the break, we will take you to South Korea, where Air Force officials are investigating why multiple bombs were dropped on civilians during a training exercise with U.S. military.
First, after the break, the Trump administration's, quote, last warning to Hamas, talking directly to the militant group in an effort to try and bring those remaining hostages home. Those stories and more next.
Welcome back. In a break from long-standing American policy, the U.S. is engaging in direct talks with Hamas on the remaining hostages in Gaza. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed these talks between the Trump administration and the militant group yesterday, calling the move a, quote, good faith effort. Meanwhile, the president made his own threat to members of Hamas as well as Palestinians. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest on this. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Hey, so this situation obviously has been very confusing for a lot of folks. We're here in Hostage Square right now, where people are very encouraged by this new development, by all of the pressure that the administration is putting on Hamas. They're mourning. You can hear some of them are playing music. They're waiting for dozens of people who are still being held in the Gaza Strip to finally come home. Here's our report. Today, a diplomatic bombshell for the Middle East. The White House confirming that for the first time ever, the U.S. is speaking directly to Hamas, negotiating for the release of American hostages in Gaza. The move so unusual because Hamas is a designated terrorist group.
Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort.
The president himself writing to Hamas on social media yesterday, release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it's over for you. President Trump told Hamas leaders to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. In their response, Hamas said the president's position gives the war criminal Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, the strength and ability to continue his crimes. Trump's fresh threats against Hamas came after the president met with 8 hostages who were released from Gaza in the Oval Office.
We believe you've been sent by God to release them.
Of the 59 hostages still believed to be held in the Gaza Strip, 5 are Americans, but only one, Aiden Alexander, is believed to still be alive. Their fate hangs on a shaky truce the U.S. negotiated between Hamas and Israel in late January. The first phase of the ceasefire expired on Saturday. Talks to extend the first phase or negotiate toward a second phase in a more permanent treaty have so far come to nothing. To pressure Hamas, Israel cut off aid to Gaza on Sunday, causing food prices to surge.
The situation is getting much more dire. We require an immediate stop to this madness before tragedy.
And you know, Savannah, that White House spokeswoman, she was actually asked whether those direct consultations between the Trump administration and Hamas brought up that controversial proposal by Donald Trump to own Gaza and to turn it into a, quote, Riviera. She declined to comment. Savannah?
All right, Matt, thank you.
Let's turn now to the arrest of an ISIS terrorist. He's accused of helping plan the 2021 suicide bombing that killed 13 American soldiers at a Kabul airport in Afghanistan. The arrest was first announced by President Trump during his address to Congress on Tuesday night. The suspect, known as Jafar, is now in U.S. custody after he was extradited from Pakistan. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian has more.
It was one of the darkest days of the 2-decade American war in Afghanistan. 13 U.S. service members were among 173 people killed by a suicide bomber, just days before U.S. troops left the country in August 2021. Among them, Kelly Barnett's son, Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover.
We used to call him our protector. He always was like that, but he was just such a good person.
An ISIS terror suspect, who the FBI says confessed to helping carry out the bombing, is in U.S. custody, facing federal criminal charges after being handed over by Pakistan.
We have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Mohammed Sharifullah, also known as Jafar, did not enter a plea when he appeared in court Wednesday to face terrorism charges. He faces life in prison. CIA Director John Ratcliffe offering details on how it all went down.
I spoke with the head of Pakistani intelligence. I shared with him intelligence that we had indicating that Jafar was located in the Afghan-Pakistan border region. I told him if he wanted to work with President Trump and have good relations with our country, that they would make this a high priority.
An American official tells NBC News the U.S. did not participate in the arrest.
I was there at Dulles Airport last night to receive him, along with FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard.
The Biden administration said in 2023 that the ISIS terrorist who masterminded the attack was killed by the Taliban, with no U.S. involvement. Trump administration officials criticized what they said was a failure by the Biden team to do more. Two former senior Biden administration officials said they set the stage for the capture through years of intelligence sharing with Pakistan to hunt for Sharifullah and other ISIS terrorists.
Just in 3 years, the Biden administration couldn't bring this man to justice. In a month, through our intel sharing relationship, the great work of Director Radcliffe, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, he landed overnight.
Barnett echoing that sentiment. What was your reaction to this news?
It did fill me with a lot of hope. We promises kept. He's keeping his word to us, and it feels good to know that we're being remembered.
Court records say Sharifullah waived his Miranda rights and confessed to FBI agents that he helped plan the Abbey Gate attack, including scouting a route near the airport for the attacker and relaying that it was clear. According to those records, he also told the FBI he helped train the ISIS terrorists who killed 130 people in a 2024 attack on a concert hall near Moscow, and that he helped a suicide bomber kill 10 Canadian embassy guards in Kabul in 2016. A top federal prosecutor said the charges underscore an American commitment to hold accountable all who facilitate and carry out acts of terror against us.
And our thanks to Ken Delaney for that report.
Well, now to a frightening scene in South Korea where a fighter jet accidentally dropped a bomb on a local village, injuring more than a dozen people.
NBC's Matt Bodner has more on what we know so far, plus some other world headlines. Matt, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning. The South Korean Air Force says that it will launch an investigation to determine how exactly something like this can happen, also to assess the scale of the damage to civilians and their homes. The incident involved 2 South Korean F-16s participating in a live fire exercise with the U.S. military. These 2 jets dropped 8 Mark 82 bombs over civilian housing just outside of their exercise area, injuring 15 people. One local report suggested that the pilot of one of the F-16s input the wrong target coordinates into his firing system. That does not, however, necessarily explain why the second aircraft did the same thing. Moving along now to the Vatican, concerns over the health of Pope Francis continue, with the Vatican providing another update this morning, saying simply, quote, "It was a peaceful night. The Pope is still resting." This statement follows closely yesterday's update, which noted he slept well overnight and continued his treatment in the hospital on Ash Wednesday. And we'll wrap up this hour with some World Cup news. FIFA is planning to give out $1 billion in prize money as part of this summer's Club World Cup. That is not to be confused with the National World Cup. This competition will see normal club teams compete in a 32-team bracket. The winner of this contest will take home as much as $100 million. The Club World Cup is a new initiative from FIFA, and it has signed a $1 billion broadcast deal to air the event. The Club World Cup will kick off on June 14th, be played in the United States, and the final is scheduled to take place at MetLife Stadium, home, of course, to the Giants and the Jets.
Right in our backyard.
There you go. And that $1 billion pool, just like my March Madness pool.
Yeah.
$1 billion every year to the winner. So, all right, Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Now to the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster, which takes us to Scotland, thanks to this image Could this help to finally solve the mystery of the monster affectionately called Nessie? NBC News correspondent Molly Hunter has the very latest for us. Molly, good morning.
Guys, good morning from the banks of the River Thames down in London, but we are all eyes on Loch Ness up in Scotland. As you say, Joe, this is a mystery that has captivated the world, Scots and visitors alike, for nearly a century. And now this picture may be the answer. Take a look.
Beneath the murky waters of the legendary Scottish loch lurks a mystery, and this week, perhaps, a new clue.
We think it's the first potential sighting of 2025. It's absolutely fantastic. It really looks like something is like bulging out from underneath the water.
A new picture has surfaced showing what appeared to be a large dark mass beneath the calm, still waters of the loch, according to the official Loch Ness Centre.
I just think it shows us that there's possibilities, that the search is not over, that there's still that we're still carrying out research and surface watch on the waters.
In fact, the centre is now looking for a new full-time monster hunter, an adventurous skipper, the ad says, for the deep scan vessel to keep the search alive. The job joins a long line of Nessie hunters over the last century. Since the early 1930s, there have been more than 1,000 recorded sightings of some kind of creature dwelling in Loch Ness.
So this black hump come out of the water.
It was like a torpedo going through the water.
Nowadays, there's a live stream of the loch, but researchers have deployed all tools imaginable: submarines, sonar, and last summer flew drones overhead. For decades, the leading theory was that Nessie was a plesiosaur, a dinosaur who had somehow survived. But scientists have tested the water for DNA.
Let's get down to it. Is there a plesiosaur in Loch Ness? No.
But they did find evidence of eel DNA.
It's plausible that there might be one or two that grow to extreme size.
Plausible, sure, but no photograph has ever proven that.
Definite fake.
Most snaps of Nessie, and there have been a lot, have been debunked. But the myth survives.
Well, he towed a nice bit of fiberglass behind his boat, but this is the famous one. What people think now is that it's actually this little thing. It's a submarine with a plasticine monster's head on top of it.
Experts and researchers will now analyze this week's newest sighting, looking for any evidence that Nessie lives on.
Now, Joe, I'm looking at the ad for the head Nessie hunter I just mentioned in the piece, and I quote, it says a successful candidate will spend their days searching for legendary Nessie. You've got to be an experienced skipper and a passionate storyteller. It pays about $230 a day, and you got to move to beautiful Scotland. Joe?
All right, not bad. I'll add it to the list. Molly, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pretty good gig.
Exactly. I'll take it. All right, coming up, a new battle facing victims of those deadly wildfires that ravaged Southern California earlier this year.
After the break, the growing frustration among residents over insurance claims for their homes that survived but are unsafe to return to. We'll explain that up next.
Welcome back. It has been nearly 2 months since those deadly wildfires scorched parts of Los Angeles. As the city continues to rebuild, there is a new fight over insurance claims for residents whose homes survived the fire, but now it's just not safe to return. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has more.
We built the house. We put every dollar we had into it.
Ian Hardcastle seems like one of the lucky ones.
I was shocked that it's still here.
His Pacific Palisades home survived the devastating LA fires.
This is the plaque.
The tree he and his wife Veronica planted in memory of their late baby girl Charlie, remarkably still standing.
We like to think that she was kind of looking over our house in the neighborhood, and that's the reason why it's still here.
But their home, far from habitable. Inside, black ash covering nearly every surface.
Okay, so these hygienists have been testing for fire emissions in the air, carcinogens, gases, because it's not just about this visible ash that we see here around the home. It's also about the toxins that we can't see.
Toxic debris expert Don Bolstad Johnson says anything porous is likely tainted.
We're in the nursery. What are the concerns, though?
So the concerns that I have is we're finding hydrogen cyanide gas in here.
Do you suggest someone move back into this home as it is right now?
No, not with what I'm seeing right now, no.
But the Hardcastles, who are now in a rental with their 1-year-old and another on the way, say their insurance, the California Fair Plan, doesn't appear to see it that way.
They sent us a document unprovoked that basically pointed to language saying that smoke damage will only be covered if something is
ruined and destroyed, visible to the eye.
What that could mean, hundreds of thousands in out-of-pocket expenses, replacing everything from the drywall to furniture, even your clothes.
But the insurance company kind of treats you like the forgotten stepchild.
They just say, it looks okay.
Yeah, it's just dirty.
Dirty.
Clean it.
Clean.
And the Hardcastles are not alone. Thousands of other fire victims also rely on the FAIR Plan, the state's insurer of last resort, a plan that in 2022 was found by the state's Department of Insurance to have been illegally underpaying or denying smoke damage claims, findings the FAIR Plan disputes. Attorney Dylan Schaffer has litigated against the FAIR Plan for years.
And California FAIR Plan takes the position that the family, which includes very, very young children, should move back into this house and clean it themselves. So his options are essentially accept the loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars or hire me and file a lawsuit, which nobody wants to do.
Or the other option, move back into a home that could make you or your family sick.
Will make him sick.
Ian is hoping the test results from inside his home will sway his insurer. But just this week, he received this initial estimate for remediation, roughly $1,800, money he won't get because it's within his deductible.
We don't want to live in a house that poisons us.
The California FAIR Plan declined to comment on the Hardcastles case, but in a statement said the FAIR Plan pays all covered claims, including smoke claims, consistent with California law, and that our policy and approach to direct physical loss is consistent with other insurers.
FAIR Plan is an outlier by a very, very big distance. They believe that these homes are not damaged. State Farm and Liberty Mutual and USAA, they will acknowledge that the homes are damaged, and then the question becomes what they pay.
For now, the Hardcastles left in limbo, questioning how they'll be able to get back to the home that means so much.
And we want to come back when it's safe to come back.
Yeah.
We don't know when that will be.
Liz Kreutz, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Tennis star Emma Raducanu is opening up for the first time about that scary situation that left her in tears on the court. It happened during a tournament in Dubai, where the British player spotted a man who had been following her across multiple events. Now, as she makes her return at a competition in California, she's speaking out about what happened and the changes that she is making to feel safer. NBC's Kaylee Hartung has the details.
Hey there. According to BBC Sport, Raducanu was followed to 4 tournaments in Asia by the same man who showed up near her hotel in Dubai, took her photo, and gave her a letter. He then appeared courtside at her match the next day, triggering his expulsion and subsequent ban from all Women's Tennis Association events.
I wasn't necessarily sure if I was going to come and compete so soon after what happened in Dubai, but I'm glad I made the decision to come here, and I'm loving, being here.
Bouncing back from adversity, Emma Raducanu returns to the court this morning for the first time since her frightening experience at a tournament in Dubai 2 weeks ago. And speaking out for the first time since the incident. The 22-year-old British player telling reporters, "I saw him in the first game of the match, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to finish. I literally couldn't see the ball through tears. I could barely breathe."
This is very, very concerning.
It happened early in her second-round match against Karolina Muchova.
Something has happened, and I'm not sure what it is.
Raducanu leaving the court and ducking behind the umpire's chair after spotting a man who'd exhibited fixated behavior towards her. The Women's Tennis Association says the man, whose name has not been made public, was ejected from the arena and has been banned from all WTA events. Dubai police say he was detained and ordered to stay away from Raducanu, who chose to drop the charges. After the match, Raducanu said, "I completely broke down in tears. There was just so much emotion. I needed a week off to take a breather." Raducanu says she feels better now, posting cheerful selfies in the California desert.
I'm very happy to be in Indian Wells. It's my favorite tournament outside of the slams.
She was made to feel unsafe, and I think her experience is one that is shared by a lot of other female athletes.
One of those, tennis superstar Monica Seles, who in 1993 went through a terrifying experience on the court when she was stabbed in the back during a tournament in Germany by a member of the crowd. Now, over 30 years later, fans still fearing for the safety of female players.
So the WTA does have protections in place for female athletes. Players are escorted to and from match court by security, and extra protection was given to Raducanu after her concerns were raised. But she's expressed how this experience has affected how she goes about her daily life, like when she's back home in England. She declined our request for an interview. Back Back to you.
All right, Kaylee, thank you. Coming up, if you are looking for a bit of a vacation after a bitterly cold winter, why not try going your own way? Solo travel is shaping up to be a big springtime craze this year. So what's the appeal? We're going to dig into that and some other top trends straight from Airbnb next. We're back with a look at how one retailer is hoping nostalgia will play a role in its big comeback. Last year, Abercrombie & Fitch turned heads with its turnaround. The clothing brand's stock price skyrocketed, but so far this year, not so hot. Just yesterday, the company shared disappointing sales with a weak forecast looking forward. Well, another brand from the 90s is trying to jump back into the spotlight. We're talking about The Gap. Its CEO is pulling from the brand's pop culture to try and revitalize its bottom line. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo has that story.
The Gap looking to dance its way back into relevance. Tapping into the zeitgeist with an ad featuring Parker Posey, the star of one of TV's buzziest shows, The White Lotus.
I don't know her.
And if the new ad reminds you of something,
Baby.
the khakis, the dancing, well, that's because it's out of a pretty old playbook from when the brand dominated the 1990s.
Get it going, Daddy. Gap is on the move.
In its heyday, a pop culture icon built on essentials to round out the wardrobe, even getting its own SNL sketch.
What can you wear this shirt with? Levi's, khakis, anything.
What about shorts?
Definitely.
Gap Body, Gap Kids, Baby Gap. The Gap was in American malls and hearts. The company's value peaking in 1999 at $43.4 billion. The khaki giant's crowning achievement? Sharon Stone wearing Gap shirts to not just one, but 2 Academy Awards ceremonies. Its success didn't make it much past Y2K. Analysts saying its fortunes were tied to the decline of malls and an inability to keep up with the onslaught of fast fashion brands. The Gap did have a brief comeback during the 2014-2015 normcore trend, but that was short-lived. The Gap's valuation, which includes Banana Republic, Athleta, and Old Navy, struggling to top $10 billion since 2019, even getting close to bankruptcy during the pandemic, when it announced it would close 350 stores. Now, the attempted revival being orchestrated by its new CEO, former Mattel exec Richard Dixon, who says he's leaning into music and celebrities, like this Tyla ad from last year.
We've seen a recovery in all 4 of the brands.
Yeah.
Is Gap culturally relevant again?
Look, we've made a lot of progress.
In a bold move, Dixon bringing in a fashion world insider, Zach Posen, as his creative director.
He's a cultural figure who's been around for over 20 years, incredible connections.
Alex Badia, the style director for Women's Wear Daily, saying the Gap could have its moment.
There is a complete authenticity obsession right now. They really resonate as a truth, heritage, legacy brand, and people want authenticity.
And the Gap isn't the only brand riding the wave of 90s nostalgia.
Ralph Lauren is hotter than ever. And it's the same reason. Abercrombie & Fitch is another success story.
So did we actually see the Gap's future back in 2002?
Welcome back to the Gap.
For right now, the present looks a lot more like the past. Stephen Romo, NBC News.
Staying on your wallet, we've got more now on automaker giant Stellantis' response to dodging some of that tariff pressure from the White House. CNBC's Savannah Henao has a quick look at some money headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yes, Stellantis, that's the parent company of Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep, thanking President Trump for granting a one-month exemption for automakers from 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. The automaker says it shares the president's goal of building more cars in the United States. Millions of cars sold here are assembled in Canada and Mexico, and more than half the parts on some popular models are shipped from those countries. Volkswagen showing off its new entry-level electric vehicle at an event in Germany yesterday. VW calling the ID Everyone concept car as a smart and affordable EV for the masses, but it will only be sold in Europe. Now, the car will run on a new software platform, which may be part of its $5 billion partnership with Rivian. The production version is expected to start around 20,000 euros. That's about $21,500. And Utah is the first state to pass a measure requiring app stores to verify users' ages and parental consent for minors to download apps. Other states have tried to pass a number of regulations and age requirements, but many have been blocked in the courts. Meta, Snap, and X are applauding Utah's move and are urging Congress to follow suit, Joe.
All right, interesting. Savannah, thank you so much. After a rough winter here in the U.S., it's no surprise many people are looking for a much-needed travel break this year. So this morning, we're looking at Airbnb's top trends for this upcoming spring season. And one of those key trends is solo travel. Airbnb says that it is seeing a 90% growth in searches for solo spring dates compared to last year. There's also a 40% jump in searches for those single vacationers looking to bring their pets along for the trip. For more, we're joined by Sam Randall, the Senior Business Communications Lead over at Airbnb. Sam, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with this big spike in solo travel. Why do you think we're seeing this kind of boom right now? And what's the appeal of going by yourself or with your pets versus, friends?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, we've seen a huge increase, 90% growth in solo travel for spring travel this year. I think it's part of the trend we're seeing around soft travel. So vacationers looking to really unplug and focus on relaxation, connection, and taking things slow. Part of this trend, the average night for a solo traveler traveling this spring, the average nights booked is 17 days. So they're really taking their time, spending a lot of quality time in the destinations they're traveling to. And as you mentioned, some people might be sad that people are traveling solo, but they're really not. They're bringing their pets with, bringing their dogs and cats. And, that's what's great about Airbnb. We have, a ton of pet-friendly listings. They're easy to find on the site. If you just check the search filters in the upper right when you're looking at a destination, and you're looking to bring your pet, find those pet-friendly search filters, and you'll find some really great stays across the world.
17 days? My goodness, I've never done that in my life. I have to rethink my vacations.
Neither have I. I have 2 young kids, but it's great for people that are looking to disconnect and travel solo this year.
No kidding. All right. It's hard to talk about trends without mentioning Gen Z. I mean, what kind of trends are they into right now?
Yeah, what we're seeing with Gen Z is they're really focused on wellness and nature escapes. So Gen Z is looking to unplug and immerse themselves in nature, booking countryside retreats and cabins in the woods, focused on forest bathing, which is really immersing themselves, in nature and around trees, booking experiences like horseback riding. They're prioritizing unplugging and recharging in really serene environments.
So with spring break right now, what are some of the most popular destinations this year?
Yeah, and a lot of people might wonder, how do we come up? Where do these trends come from? We have 8 million listings, over 8 million listings across the world, billions of searches every year on Airbnb. So that gives us some really interesting data and insights into how and where people are traveling for any given season. So this year we're seeing some really interesting destinations like Basel, Switzerland, for example, or Taito City, Japan, which is a really cool town north of Tokyo, Cologne, Germany. Actually, Stillwater, Oklahoma made the list, which is the home of Oklahoma State University. And then, as you expect, people are looking to put their feet in the sand. So a place like Ubatuba, Brazil, which is really fun to say. That's a beautiful coastal city outside of Sao Paulo. Gulf Shores, Alabama, which as a Midwestern kid was near and dear to my heart. Glad that's still a great spring break destination for families.
Real quick, do you have any good tips for booking a great stay this spring? We got like 30 seconds here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned, check out those search filters. We have a completely redesigned search filters, which you can find in the upper right-hand side of the platform. It's intuitive. It gives you suggestions based on past travel. You can really specify what you're looking for and find some great stays based on those filters. And then also, look for quality badges like our guest favorites. This is something we launched in 2023, we've seen over 250 million bookings since we've launched it. And that really those are the top rated stays on Airbnb. I'd encourage people to check those out. And then also just check the reviews. Yeah. That's a great way to, get the expectations you're looking for as you head into spring travel.
All right, Sam Randall, I'm going to start looking into that 17-day vacation right now. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, coming up, we are flipping the script with the multi-talented creative force behind the Emmy-nominated web series Eastsiders. Well, now Kit Williamson stars in a new queer comedy called Unconventional. It's bringing some untold stories of LGBTQ plus family life right to the limelight. Kit joins us next. Stick around. Let's end this hour with our series Flipping the Script, featuring people on air, on stage, and behind the scenes who are shining a spotlight on diversity. Enter Kit Williamson, the actor, writer, and director, might be best known for his Emmy-nominated digital series Eastsiders, about a couple trying to navigate life. Well, now he's starring in the new series Unconventional, which focuses on a pair of queer siblings and their partners navigating family life. And we are lucky to have Kit with us live in studio this morning. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Unconventional, what should people know about it? What was sort of the focus of this project for you?
Well, Unconventional is a dark comedy about two eccentric queer siblings and their significant others trying to start an unconventional family, where my character will be the sperm donor to his sister's girlfriend, if that makes sense.
Yes. Did you know anyone who had that experience, or were you pulling...
Actually, yes. Multiple people. You'd be surprised.
Right. I've heard it before, too, I think. So, yeah.
And queer people, they have to kind of chart their own course in this life in terms of family planning and just in terms of life in general. And I think there's a real beauty to that, as well as challenges.
You have some really fun people who make appearances in this special. I mean, were you pinching yourself over some of the folks who agreed to star in this?
Are you kidding? Absolutely. I mean, Kathy Griffin, Beau Bridges, Willem, and our core cast is incredible. They're all openly queer actors playing these roles authentically, and it's so cool to get to see them all work.
You recently said in an interview with Variety that Unconventional isn't about politics, but, quote, unfortunately, our lives have been politicized. Talk more about what you mean by that.
So it's really about visibility, right? If you can exist in public spaces, if you can be authentically and openly yourself without repercussion, I don't see that that is a political thing, but unfortunately, that is something people are trying to make political. As RuPaul says, every time you get in drag, it's a political act. I think every time you walk down the street holding your husband's hand, that's a political act too.
When we were younger, or at least when I was younger, there weren't shows like this. There was no shows that I could watch or anything like that. What is the power, do you feel, of having a show like Unconventional on the air when it comes especially to younger people who are seeking LGBTQ plus representation?
Growing up gay in Mississippi, I didn't know anybody like me. I didn't see anybody like me on television. And it was really life-changing when I started to see myself reflected in stories. It helped me envision a future where I could be happy, where I could find a husband, a partner in this life, and, live my life as myself and be accepted and loved for it. I think that's the power of storytelling.
And honest storytelling, right? I mean, you talk about things that might be considered taboo by some, but for you, is it important to go there?
Absolutely. It's a dark comedy. At the end of the day, I'm more interested in exploring the mess of life and how you navigate challenges and hardships than just painting a rosy picture.
So especially in this time we're in right now, for people who see the show, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope that people take away that you have the freedom in this world to live your life authentically and truthfully, and nobody can take that away from you.
You've talked about how with Eastsiders, you created that because you weren't seeing big networks tell these kinds of stories. Has that changed since then? What are you seeing now on some of these bigger platforms?
We've made such incredible strides over the last 10 years in terms of representation. But unfortunately, if you look at the last 4 years, the GLAAD Media Report, we've seen that representation nosedive on network television, streaming, and cable. And that's not even to say whether or not that representation is substantive. It's one thing to be in the story. It's another thing to be at the center of it and really have your truth explored.
Which is one of, I think, the biggest fights is sort of over the years. You're like, oh, you see an LGBTQ plus character, but they're like, the side character who sort of plays maybe a stereotype, and they're not the heart of the show.
Right, you're a bystander to the action. We want to let queer characters be the center of the story.
What do you think it's going to take to change that and increase those numbers?
I think that people need to understand that it's not a fluke when these shows succeed. Everybody always acts surprised whenever a show that's really centered around any sort of marginalized or less represented person succeeds, be it queer people, people of color, or even women. Hollywood always acts shocked that people come out and it's the #1 movie in America when you have a story that centers female characters. But it happens time and time and time again. So I think we just need to get to a place where we're not surprised by it.
Kit Williamson, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And Unconventional is now streaming on Reverie. We appreciate it. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but don't go anywhere. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.